A very good afternoon to you all and a warm welcome to this edition of the Citizens Chat Show, streaming on YouTube at Civic Space TV. A pleasure to have you all joining us. My name is Judith Atim. I'm your host. And today we are discussing the militarization and abductions in the East African community. And we're asking, what's the future of democracy? My name is Judith Atim once again, and I am pleased to be joined by these distinguished panelists. And I'll start introducing from my immediate left, Dr. Robert Ojambo, who is the head of the History Department at Kyambogo University. Good afternoon, Dr. Ojambo.
Good afternoon and welcome back. Last time you left the show to only the O's. The moderator was all, the two panelists were O's.
And it was an all-male affair. So today I am happy we've broken that monotony. It's good to be back. Next to Mr. Ojambo is Honorable Rose Obigah, who is the woman member of parliament for Terego district in West Nile. Honorable, good to have you.
I'm more than delighted. It's quite some time I've not been there. I owe Civic Space TV
a lot.
I promise to become more regular, and I'll always be here because this is home.
Thank you. Thank you. We can't wait to actually have you next week and the next and the other one.
I'll be there.
Yes, of course, next to Honorable is our good colleague, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, who is a political commentator, is also a UPC ideologue, very passionate about UPC, very passionate about democracy and governance, and just the aspirations for a better Uganda. Joseph, good to have you.
Thank you very much.
I missed you all last week, but I'm glad to be back.
We were very concerned here. We nearly sent for police 999, but in this republic we might have found them possibly busy in Nairobi. But I'm delighted to be here, and especially backed and flanked by my two fantastic friends. And Rose, you are the only individual in the current assembly from West Nile sub-region who, in the absence of a UPC candidate, I would vote for. And I really hope that you get a guaranteed return to Terego. Thank you for the fantastic work you do.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, my grandfather was one of the big swords in UPC, Abanya.
Yes.
Oh.
So,
you're a historical.
That's
We're the future.
Thank you. Thanks, Joseph. Last but not least is Miriam Kyomugasho. Miriam is a Pan-Africanist. She's a researcher based in Ohio in the US, but she's with us here, running away from bad weather, enjoying warmer climates here, and hopefully she'll still be with us for a while, and we should be happy to have you on the show a couple of times before you return.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Miriam. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Judith and the viewers. I'm so glad to be here. Civic Space is home, and it's always a pleasure to join you and the fellow panelists.
Yes.
Courtesy to my presence, we shall be hosting Miriam in as long as she's within reach.
That's what I'm saying. Like, yes, but also you can, when Miriam is not around, you always catch her on the Diaspora Show, which also it's also one of our programs here on Civic Space TV. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's dive right into this discussion: the militarization of and abductions in the community. We're not just talking about Uganda. We're seeing a pattern, and we're having this conversation, of course, in light of the recent abduction of Dr. Kizza Besigye. But previously, before Dr. Besigye's abduction, we had politicians from the Forum for Democratic Change Party as well, abducted in Kenya. We are seeing a pattern of unrest across East Africa. Similar things are happening in Tanzania, of course, also opposition politicians being abducted here and there. The region is generally restive when you look at it within the political context. And of course, it brings us to the question, where is the future of democracy? Because ideally, in a democratic society, you should not see things like abductions. You should not see things like human rights abuses and so on. But this is becoming the norm within the region. And it is saddening, actually, to anyone who is a lover of democracy. This is definitely saddening, and it doesn't bode well for the future. There's a lot of uncertainty. But I'd like to hear your thoughts about this topic, starting with you, Dr. Robert, then we'll move.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judith. Last week we somehow delved into this topic and not so much has changed. Last time I said that Kenya, for sure, is going through a very difficult moment. Anybody watching Kenyan TV or listening to a Kenyan radio, the comments that are coming from the citizens and any commentator are not good for President Ruto. As I said last time, Ruto's government and Kenya in general is neither here nor there, because the thing has put them at the crossroad. Whether they deny that they were not involved, they commit some offense, if there is anything like that. If they say, yes, we were involved, it also leads them to a lot of problems, because whatever was done was sort of dramatic. It reminds people those days during the Cold War, when people would still do things in a draconian way and either blame the CIA or any other group. You remember what happened in Congo and many places in Africa here. So it is reminding us a lot of bad history in our region. I just said last time that in addition to Besigye, Kenya, they have been abducting Kenyans, and already the number had reached 1,337 people who had been abducted. Some are not known up today where they are. Some have died, some have been recovered, including the few Gen Zs recently. In Tanzania, you remember before Magufuli died, people were being found on the ocean dead. Journalists, politicians, and anybody who had a dissenting voice. When the current president took over, it somehow subsidized, because she preached peace and a few people crossed from Chadema to CCM and things were going on well. But remember, they are now preparing for an election and abductions have again come up. And so many people have been abducted. You look at South Sudan, I don't want to talk about it because recently there was even gunshots there. You are not sure about which country is peaceful here. Rwanda is a huge culprit in abductions and killings. But now talk about this specific issue. As I said last time, I cannot say that Besigye may not have gotten involved in whatever they are alleging that he did. And I did mention that Besigye has ever been a rebel in Uganda, NRA, and having come from Kenya. But for us, what we are against is the way they did it. Nobody is going to listen to any story. And I want to tell you that I've been reading about this law of sub judice. And I have discovered it only applies to the people who are interested in court. I am not an interested party in that case, so I will comment. And the good thing, I even don't know the substantive issues which are being accused in that court, so I am not sure. When you look at what was presented about Kizza Besigye, why he was abducted, because in Kenya, they have failed to convince people whether Besigye was not abducted. This story of being arrested has just failed to flow in the minds of the people, because the authority, the security systems have all denied that they were not involved. So if they were not involved, then what happened? It is a movie-like thing, these Van Damme things where you go and pick somebody and take him away. I really think that our country should have done better. If Besigye had a case, in Nairobi where he was, there is a police post just near there. There is a court of law. This man should have been presented to the police post or arrested and taken to police, then arraigned to the court of law, and then the processes would then be followed. Last time I told you that there were two things that we expected to happen. Either This guy is arrested, laid before the law, and deported to Uganda. Deported to Uganda. I said, this man is a complicated person. Let him go back and solve his issues. The other one was to extradite him. And that word, if for those who study law, comes from a Latin word, which means to bring back somebody to be tried. And if you bring back somebody, there is a process that is normally followed. You have to go to the local court. In this case, we're in the British system. So even in Kenya, there is a magistrate court. So they have to go to the magistrate court and report the matter. Then it goes to the high court. Then the high court, the person is brought. That person, even if he's a criminal, even if he has done a horrendous thing, even if he has bombed a church or any other complicated thing, they would take him there. Then he would be asked why he should not be sent back to Uganda, so that he's tried for the crimes that he had committed. And that one happens if you have committed a crime in your country of origin where you are being taken. Sometimes it can be a Ugandan being taken to the US because you committed the crime from US. Yes. But in this case, they are telling us that this man was found with the ammunitions and 2 guns, 2 pistols. So you can imagine Besigye coming back to Uganda to overthrow government with the 2 pistols and the 8 bullets. So this man had become a Chuck Norris of some sort. For those who used to watch those movies of young children, Chuck Norris, part 1. And I was wondering, if a man is just with 2 pistols, and 8 bullets, it is a matter that police can handle, because police even arrests those ones who have AK-47, who have even bombs. He was not a terrorist that he was putting in place bombs. So this man would have followed the law and be brought here. And therefore, the issue would have been, did he go with the pistols? If the pistols are Kenyan pistols, then the case would be Kenya. If it is Uganda, then it would also cause a problem, because the few times I've passed Entebbe, it's even difficult to pass there with a razor blade. A razor blade in your bag. It's quite difficult. They will tell you, what is this that is making noise there? So my view is that I think this matter is more political than security. So I think there is a lot of politics in it. But you see, the politicians in Africa are willing to do anything to advance their political agenda. You remember what happened when we were going for election. People had to die for some political agenda to go through, and we don't want that. So me, I think, generally when you look at Kenya, probably Ruto is encouraging this kind of thing because he is using the same tool in his own country. Because people are complaining about abduction. The other day I was listening to young men denouncing Oginga Odinga. And the issue was, how can you associate with the person who is abducting us? They were asking. The people are being abducted in Kenya. So abduction of Besigye is just that because Besigye is a big figure. But abductions in Kenya have been a big thing. I told you last time that Kenya has become almost a mercenary country. An official, a person who was in opposition in Ethiopia, was abducted in Nairobi and taken to Ethiopia. The owner of these light colleges, we even have one here, Light Academy, these Turkish
institutions, yes.
The Turkish government came and abducted him in Kenya and took him to Turkey. There was an officer from South Sudan who was also abducted in Kenya and taken back to South Sudan. So it looks like Kenya is becoming an abduction center. Somebody the other day said that Ruto is practicing diplomacy of abduction. So I think Ruto is in big trouble. He has a lot of issues. His economy is at disarray. He has a problem in his party. He has just fallen out with his vice deputy president, who is now out. He has a lot of issues in the mountain now. So he's using this method, I think, and Kenyans sometimes accuse Uganda that it is Ugandans who have gone there. One time I was from a funeral and they saw
I needed to
a
wind up.
Ugandan number plate and they said, this must be soldiers. They think everybody now going there from Uganda is a soldier. But the last thing I want to say is that, it is an indictment to Kenyan government. If they really pretend successfully and say that they were not involved in this matter, then you ask them a question. How can foreign forces come to your capital city, pick a person, and take him, and the next time we hear about him, he's in a court martial, and you don't give... We have not seen any statement
from
by
the government of Kenya, yes,
up to today.
Thank you.
So I think that is an indictment.
Thank you, Doctor. Honorable Rose, let's hear from you. This has been a big issue in Parliament as well over the past couple of days. And there are definitely a lot of concerns. But you, as a member of Parliament, what is your reading into this, and basically what exactly it means for relations across the region, but also for the future of democracy, for the citizens?
Thank you. I'm one MP who is known for speaking her mind. And this issue of Besigye and then the so-called East African community, to me, has outlived its usefulness. Honestly, we can't say you are secure in another country where we have been abducted left, right, and center. Excuse me. On Friday, I flew in maggots from Sudan to Uganda. This is a very, very resourceful businessman, actually more resourceful to South Sudan, because late Muki Johnson John has established one of the biggest pharmacies in South Sudan. Now, government accused him of treating rebels, selling drugs to rebels. Now, they abducted him. He was from the bank. He picked 20 million. As he stepped out of the bank, just reaching his car, he was picked. And so South Sudan government did not deny that they picked Muki Johnson. They said, we have him.
Yeah.
Then they said, can we access him? They kept picking money, 30 million, 20 million. Oh, we need money. Can you imagine? After they electrocuted this man, to me, he stayed 1 month and 5 days. To me, in the first 1 hour or 2 hours, Muki died. But they kept extorting money. You just talked about extradition. He could have, if the Sudan government had evidence, they should have extradited Muki to Uganda, because we are East African, and we have laws. Honestly, they murdered this guy, and they started, after I fought single-handedly. I called everybody in the government. It's like people just believe the courts have lost their meaning in most cases. Now, in East Africa, we have been picked like chicken thieves. After 1 month and 5 days, I can tell you Muki's head fell off. Maggots were coming through here. Here was all maggots. The legs fell off. The hands fell off.
So the body was not even preserved. It wasn't even given that dignity. We got
it in the bush.
Oh no.
In the bush. And then later on, they started saying the relatives said they gave permission to bury Muki. Which relatives? They blocked flying off Muki's body. The body was got after 1 month and 2 days. But the 3 days were hell. In that 1 month, they extorted more than 200 million Ugandan shillings. This is what we are calling East Africa. Congo, one of our most richest businessmen, has a big hotel called Lesuba, was abducted just like this at the border. And they went. Thank God they fought, people of West Nile fought, and was brought back. This is just a drop in the ocean. Now, many are dying. I don't know whether my government is aware of what Sudan is doing to Uganda, what Congo is doing to Ugandan citizens. Actually, the people of Kyambogo, actually West Nile as a whole, we need face-to-face with the president. We are starting with the Prime Minister, Vice President, Speaker. We want to understand why Muki was killed. Now they have stopped anyone from operating his business, which means the drugs will expire and so forth. Look at Kizza Besigye. I wouldn't think Kizza Besigye is still a threat to Museveni and NRM government. How many times has he lost?
4.
He has lost 4 times. Even now he has grown old. This was a friend, a doctor to the president. If you want to penalize somebody, remember one good thing and stop it. This is actually blackmail, making NRM look so dirty a party. Really, you can imagine, you said a razor blade, even a needle, you cannot pass with a needle at the airport. And then how can they say Kizza Besigye went with the 2 pistols and AK-47? It reminds me of the Arua story, when they said the Arua boys threw a stone at the president of the vehicle. And now all our stones turned to have pistols, AK-47, grenades. What kind of stone is this? Really? They said we threw stones. How? This kind of rubbish where you forge the usual, that even a child can be able to understand this is not true, should stop. So I mean, I'm being honest, these things from human point of view. I thank God one day the president said he's preparing himself to meet his creator. And at that rate, I just request him, if he has not heard of this, he should really quickly release Kizza. He should release this old man. You know, what example are we learning from our parents? It is not good. If he can forgive Norbert Mao, who used to insult him every time here, and now sitting and eating with him at the round table, what has Kizza done? I don't believe this country that has bought a hell of ammunition at the expense of taxpayers' hunger and most important needs, says they can be overthrown with 2 pistols and AK-47, a joke of the year. So it's not true. These things, they don't make sense to me. We have to be Ugandan. We have to love each other regardless of our party affiliations. We are Ugandan by blood. Uganda is enough for all of us. You see, we cannot continue this way. For me, I totally disagree.
Thank you, Honorable. So, Joseph, like Honorable says, the East African community basically exists on paper pretty much, but not on the principles for which it was founded. And when you look at what the leaders are doing, they're pretty much going against the treaties that they signed under the EAC. So then where does that leave the community, in your opinion? In terms of political freedoms, in terms of the exercise of civil liberties, where does it leave us?
This is really sad because as Rose speaks and you take it from her, and she's a serving legislator and she's a fantastic lady with and of integrity, and she's talking lived experiences, including one in which a literally, I don't know whether she said in camera, a literally rotting Ugandan life in another jurisdiction. You expect that this is where we should be preparing our bombs and putting an ultimatum on South Sudan that you either explain or we shall possibly bomb you.
Yeah.
But as UPCs who don't believe in bombing, the point made here is, actually the focus is, what is it that a Ugandan is detained in South Sudan, Ugandan is detained in Congo, a Ugandan is detained in Kenya. And I told this program and others, I think including the other day, that perhaps, even if it were the case, I think Dr. Ojambo and I were talking about this, even if it were the case that Kizza Besigye had been arrested in Kenya on very serious charges of firearms offenses, including possibly causing death, you know, it was still the responsibility of the Ugandan authorities to offer consular services to Kizza Besigye in Kenya.
Yes.
It did not happen. Instead, it seems to be clearly apparent that dubious security services from Uganda, because they don't know whether they're Ugandan. Miriam, do you get it?
Yes, I see.
Dubious security services from Uganda. I'm not sure if they're Ugandan. Because if they are, no, a Ugandan is a Ugandan. Over crooked. But number two, I returned 2 days ago from West Nile. I was giving a serious joke of a possibility that I would vote for Rose. I call it a serious joke, meaning I almost certainly mean it, that in the absence of a UPC candidate there, I would vote for her and I would campaign for her. But partly because she's a fantastic Ugandan citizen, you get where it's coming from her. But number two, Judith, this Rose here, and we're discussing this, is a legislator who has put it on the table. The way she jokes that she's a member of parliament from the most rural Uganda, possibly not necessary. She's emphasizing that she's driven in her polity by the absolute needs and desires of the peoples she represents as a parliament. But coming from West Nile and seeing the squalor of poverty and seeing the extremes of despair of young people and attending the burial of a senior UPC member who died, Jessica, fantastic lady, struggling with many other things to cut it short, but around whose family, as I was having a conversation, the highest person with education was actually our uncle. The highest woman in terms of educational qualifications in her family was herself, senior 2-3 dropouts. And then on my way back, I meet these young lives, absolutely wasted, fantastically handsome, beautiful people with energy, but absolutely lost in hope and opportunities. And you look around this very hilly part of Zombo, very nice scenery, by the way. Generally in terms of physical thing that UPC gave you guys for God and my country as a national thing. So God gave us this fantastic nation state. And you see the hopelessness. And you come back, including my Nagongara, and today I'll come to the fact that I cannot cross into Nagongara because Nagongara Road Bridge is broken. Point is, do we have a government? Or Ugandans are in the hands and the pocket of a few dubious, privileged individuals? But that said, I know it's introductory. This is the point. The topic has suggested the militarization. No. We've argued again and again and again that in Uganda's case, we have a military regime. Purely military come one party. And for me, with huge amount of hope, I've been praying that we persuade Mr. Museveni and his team to look inward and democratize. The nearest country that we had always been hoping was moving towards the democratic process, or democratization as it were, is Kenya. This recent Ruto thing broke me. To the extent that William Ruto, backed by his experienced elder friend, Mr. Museveni, can allow the Kenyan soil to be used and abused and desecrated the way it was. It's criminal, you young Ruto. It's criminal. Yes. But number two, I hope you will pay, in terms of accountability, to Kenyans, the humiliation. But number two, also Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania as founded member nation states of the East African Community. Judith, what a shame is that from 1967, for which our founding parents built this foundation, today a Ugandan can go into Kenya and still be picked like a chicken thief. And that's the leader of a major opposition party in Uganda. What my colleagues have already said, and we said so before, what clearly needed to have happened is if Besigye was found to have committed an offense in Kenya, it was the responsibility of the Kenyan authorities, in fact Kenyan police, to have arrested Kizza Besigye, detained him, arraigned him in court, and Basically, he faces the law there. In the unlikely event that the offenses were such that it required a deportation of Besigye maybe entered unlawfully, something like that, then he would be deported to Uganda. Now, extradition, it would. In the unlikely event that Besigye was a fugitive in Uganda, had gone into Kenya, Ugandan authorities, Mr. Museveni, you know, and some of your, you know, guys, foreign service officers, some of them are good friends, you know, they would have to go through a legal and due diplomatic processes to apply for extradition. And that would have also to meet certain tests in Kenyan judicial systems before Besigye was brought in. It's possibly unlikely because we don't see the grounds. And then finally, if then Besigye was brought home as a political leader, Besigye would have to be tried in a civilian court of law. It did not happen. What the manifestation of is, and Museveni is allegedly revered as the elder citizen of East Africa. So you can see how bad the situation in this region is. So this Mr. Museveni or Mr. Besigye is considered the most experienced of the entire bunch in the sub-region. You know, and the most sort of organized place is Kenya. But they do this to Kizza Besigye. It means we are on our own. Then if you take the new member states of East African communities, these are not new members of the East African communities. The new East African community rose was a project Museveni and a few of their friends, possibly even some of their foreign masters, who want to control East African sub-region so that they can legally extract from Congo, legally disorganize and extract in Sudan, legally go ahead and do whatever mess they want to do with the Somali. And as African citizens, wrote openly and sometimes legally in an illegal manner in which the case of Murti has happened in Sudan. Unfortunately, there are many stories, there are many cases. My view is that beyond this conversation, and Rose broadly contextualizes it, is that are we discussing this, Rose, or are we beginning to say that we should begin to have a critical national conversation so that we're able to build a national consensus on the question of the rule of law or state of it in the Republic of Uganda, broader original traditional East Africa, which are the three communities, and then maybe review urgently, you guys as legislators, to go back and take a motion that maybe we need to review the membership. Because Rose, while you're away, I have argued that the expansion of East African community beyond the three, notwithstanding the fact that we needed a convergence criteria, but meaning that if South Sudan is a police state or a stateless state, it should not join the East African community. And if it does, it must have a criteria that meets either economic, social, political, including, therefore, that South Sudanese needed to have been subjected to a referendum. And maybe, for instance, for the future, Judith, that a future original expansion of East African community, we review, possibly table this in Parliament, and this is a legalist thing, but there's also political can be done. That we make
chairs now.
That's also, let's let him.
So maybe we should do that. But beyond that, basically, you guys, we're actually looking like fun jokes in this very important conversation. Because why? We've moved from the traditional East African communities, which are basically messy on themselves, and then wrapped ourselves with a huge amount of junk and dump, thanks in this case to the fact that some body incurred, Juba, is chairing our community and is able to break the necks of ordinary Ugandans. When we committed this country, and by the way, we got Idi Amin because of Congo, you know, we got Idi Amin because of South Sudan. And I talk with huge amount of disappointment that my government, the UPC government in 1983, was the first government to support, lest SPLA guys you forget. It's Milton Obote who was the first former organizer to support you guys, you know, as far as the SPLM and Southern Sudan Liberation Movement is concerned. We do not deserve our people being returned like junks from South Sudan, like Rosa's just said.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joseph. So, Miriam, I'm coming to you,
Yes.
but also to pick up from Honorable Rose and Robert. Robert chipped in just momentarily, reminding us how the East African community is actually being chaired by the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir, a country that is just 13 years old, struggling so much with its democracy. I was just actually here reading this Global State of Democracy Initiative report. It was last updated in 2020, September. It says South Sudan exhibits low performance across all categories of the Global State of Democracy framework and is amongst the bottom 25% of countries with regard to all factors of democracy. And that is the country where we are picking a leader to oversee affairs of the region, where you have countries that are 60 plus in democracy are still struggling. Uganda is 64 years old. Kenya is 60, around there. Everyone's about, on average, 60, 64, 65 years old. But they haven't figured out this thing called democracy. It is still a work in progress. And then a 13-year-old democracy, fragile, messed up. They have failed. From the time they had their independence in 2011, South Sudan has postponed to hold its elections 4 times. They can't even organize politically, internally to hold an election. But do you think, and that's a general question to all of you, Miriam, you would probably also give me a general comment on that. Do you think perhaps the community has set its standards very, very low, or they are probably even non-existent standards for partners to come in? Because ideally there should be a bare minimum, and you have to help the countries that are struggling to walk the journey until they've reached a certain point where they meet certain criteria before you admit them. Do you think we've actually lowered the standards, or we've not even set standards at all? Over to you.
I think, like my fellow panelists have said, I think we've lowered the standards, or we really don't have the standards, and we are trying to fix as we move along. But on South Sudan, I think we rushed into bringing them on board. Okay, incorporating them, yes, but it should have taken stages, and then we should have held them accountable to uphold some certain standards, and until they reach a certain level, then we would admit them as full-fledged members. But to talk about East Africa generally, Mr. Ojambo said that Kenya was the one-eyed guy in the whole blind system. Now, it's so disappointing that they're backsliding. So we move one step up and then so many steps backward. It's so unfortunate that most East African countries are in that category politically. TZ also has some hitches there. Uganda has a long way to go. And when you talk about militarizing the politics and democratic journey that we are taking, it's been 64 years. But Uganda, I think, is being one of those countries that is not progressing as it should be. One day we are here, but another day we are so many steps backward. And I think that Mr. Ochieno said we should ask Seven to really look inward and try to think about Uganda as a country, not about his power and his grip on it. But I don't think he has the capacity to democratize. I don't think he even believes in democracy. And he has been demonstrating that over and over. But we don't want to believe him, because it's one step into democratic processes. He said he doesn't believe in elections. He doesn't believe in fair presentation. So, and he's militarizing everything. So from the police, now every other department is militarized. SFC is the only force that is working. And we see that the real judiciary is overtaken by the court-martial, which is a kangaroo court in all aspects, even though it's in the constitution. So what is the future of Uganda? And I fear for the next elections. Today they've started kidnapping the politicians, but what will happen? We normally know this thing gets worse during the election days, and we are few days to the election. So they've started with the lead of opposition. What should we expect going forward? Are we going to even see a real election come 2026? So, and as far as I want to also comment on what Honorable Obigah commented about the increased abductions in the region. And if we really go back a little bit, we remember how Rwanda really abducted so many of its citizens with the help of Ugandan government. Most of them, some of them which were protected by UNHCR, and they broke all protocols shamelessly. They abducted, some of them were killed, some of them were taken back to Rwanda where they were running away from. Now Kenya has taken that role of being the rug in the region. He's the one to abduct people who are fleeing justice, people are fleeing injustice. And Kizza Besigye's case is so stands out because Kizza Besigye was just visiting the neighboring country, and I mean, no Ugandan officer could have kidnapped him out from there without the assistance of the government of Kenya, whether they say anything or not. It's obvious because we have borders, and those borders regulate the movements of citizens in and out, and even the visitors into another country. So the saddest part is if your country is abetting an illegality and such a crime at that level of abducting an innocent citizen in your country, and you hand them over to the state operatives in another country who could be looking for him for different reasons. So far, we don't know why Besigye was arrested. Okay, they stated he had guns, which it looks not convincing enough, but we don't know the ulterior motive, like really what is behind the why he was arrested. Why was he arrested? How many people are going to be arrested for the same reason? How far is this net coming? Are they coming to USA to catch some of us and kidnap us and bring us back to Uganda? How many people will be arrested at the airport trying to come to the country? How many people are going to be abducted from their homes illegally and dumped into those court-martial dungeons? Because we know Besigye might be big and he's presented in court after a few days, but we know so many people who have been kidnapped in Uganda and up in courts for years without any trace, without any communication to their parents or their families. And some of them were killed in that dark operations that are going on. And when you, funny enough, when you ask Google and you type in and say abduction, military abductions in Uganda, they bring you Idi Amin. We don't want to compare Museveni to Idi Amin. We really, that's the extreme. But politically, it's like we can go there anytime, and that's my fear. Yeah. It's like, suppose we really backslid there. What are the systems? What are the borders that can protect us from sliding there? The parliament is becoming something else. Sorry, Honorable Obigah, but your parliament is very disappointing as far as upholding the rule of law is concerned. The judiciary is being sidestepped, and the unfortunate thing is the judiciary is not coming out to protect its space. In any democratic systems where you have separation of powers, the judiciary should be standing out on its own and saying, this is our space. The executive shouldn't be penetrating their space, using the military to override their powers. So today, when you talk of democracy, we don't have any separation of powers to talk about. And those other three arms of government, the judiciary and the legislature, are the ones to uphold the rule of law and protect the ordinary people. So now executive gets away with whatever they want, and who is going to protect ordinary Ugandans?
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Miriam, for your thoughts. Let me come back to you, Dr. Ojambo. So we went back to, of course, South Sudan and looked at what, and the leadership at the EAC, of course, which is coming from South Sudan, the current president of South Sudan, who is the current chair of the EAC. And the struggles that South Sudan is having with its democracy. It's a 13-year-old country, very young, so many complexities and dynamics. And while you were talking, I also decided to just do a quick Google search, because I know Ukraine has been applying to join the EU for a very long time. And even when Russia invaded Ukraine, and Ukraine ran 4 days later to the EU and said, look, can you accelerate, our membership to join the EU? The EU said, look, we still stand with you. We give you all the support, but there are still benchmarks that you have to meet. There are standards that have been set for you. Not that we don't want you to be a part of us, and not that we don't sympathize with what's happening, and you still have our support, but you must still put your house in order. Make sure you tick the boxes we've given you. There are all these parameters which are very clear. Why are our standards? I mean, what do you think has gone wrong with us, Dr. Robert? I don't even want to ask you why our standards, because I feel like it's a misplaced question, really.
Yeah, your question is in three in one, and I'm going to answer in that order.
And I'm giving you 5 minutes for that.
Number one is the East African community first. You need to look at the East African community. When you ask a local person, you see the issue in Uganda, there is a group of us who speak in English and those who speak in vernacular. And I tend to think that the people who speak in vernacular who don't know English really understand things better than us. people have been asking this East African community, what is it really? Of course, when it came up after collapsing during the Idi Amin time, and it was people thought that they were going to be a little bit different, not just a camp of some strong leaders. And because of that, the East African community, for people who don't travel and leave Uganda to go to Rwanda, what is East African community to them? I don't think there is anything. So the standards you are talking about are not there. Look at it itself. Is it even running smoothly? Last time they were here in Uganda, they were even failing to make quorum of their parliament. Their parliament failed to sit because they did not have people to make quorum. And you wonder, this institution. The heads of states, I don't know whether they have had an opportunity in the last 3 years to meet all of them, and they are all seated there, Kagame, Museveni, and the likes. You find three, one is being represented by a military commander, and another one, I don't know what. So we are not moving in tandem. Now, bringing in countries like South Sudan, Somalia, you can imagine even Somalia. Even Somalia is now a member of the East African community.
It's better than Sudan.
Somalia, which is not even yet, we are not sure whether it is a state. Because we have Somali Republic, we have Somalia, we have, I don't know which one, Somaliland, we don't know which Somalia has come here. Now come to Sudan. For some of us, the relationship between Uganda and Sudan have been very disheartening. If there was a country which would be very grateful to Uganda, is South Sudan.
Exactly.
Some of us have grown up with South Sudanese as brothers in our villages.
Sure.
Me, I come from Jinja. You can imagine from wherever they come from to Jinja. If you go to Kayunga, you may think it is Sudan. If you go to many places here, don't even bother about the border districts of West Nile, Zombo, and others. We have really protected these people. But a Ugandan can be killed for not having a warga in South Sudan. Warga is a paper permission to be in the country, which is given at the border. And yet they are saying we're in East African community. But in Sudan, you can be killed for not having a warga letter. Now, this story of the Honorable is not new. Honorable, these are stories which happen to people every day. Ugandans are being killed in South Sudan, left and center. I don't want to use this word lucky, but it will be very bad. You are lucky that you even found your person. Some people are not found, and they have just wished them away. So coming back to your question directly, I think South Sudan, you say it is a young democracy of 13 years. No. South Sudan is not a democracy. It is something else. Where have you seen a democracy with the 5 vice presidents and being protected by another country to be there? Because South Sudan, without protection of Uganda and Kenya, cannot survive.
I think, let me just correct. It's the world's youngest nation still.
Yeah, they are
the world's youngest nation. Yes,
but
not
democracy, they are not yet even there. Because the military leader who was given power after Garang died is the one who is there. His elections, you don't know whether they were elections or no elections, because after election, the other person went to jail. And he was in jail until he was made a vice president. He has gone to back and forth into the bush, and we don't know what is happening. You find the Noe are running their own things. The Dinka are running their own thing. The other group is running their own thing. The Christians are running their own thing. So there is nothing democracy there. And sometimes, that's why for me, I have really made up my mind that I cannot go to South Sudan. Unless if I am taken there by force, I cannot go there. Because you don't want a country which is almost stateless. It doesn't have a state. It is a funny place where different warriors are controlling different areas. So that country was supposed first to be stabilized. To support, Uganda would have supported, Kenya would have supported, East African community would have supported Sudan to first stabilize before we even bring it into the East African community. But the East African community, as Ochieno said, it has been used as I would call it as a bait for some people to get power in this place. Of course, the president, and I agree with him that the market would be big. If you put together East African community, it would create a big, but a market of poor people, people who don't have even what to eat, which market do you want from here? So you first have to empower people first. Because what East Africans can buy in a year, China or any other powerful country can buy it in a second.
No, so, but even then, Robert, before South Sudan joined the EAC, Uganda was already trading with them. So I don't think it would still be a problem to keep them on the waiting list while these two countries continue engaging and interacting and cooperating in other areas.
I agree with you, Judith. That one I agree with you absolutely. I don't feel that you would want to form a company or an association and one of your associating members is South Sudan or Somalia or Democratic Republic of Congo, which sometimes I call the dangerous Republic of Congo. I really feel that that is not the way to go. But let's go back to the topic of discussion.
But you're running out of time, though. In just 30 seconds, please.
Yeah. So going back to the topic of discussion, Judith, I want us to come back home here and not continue blaming Kenya now, and we start blaming ourselves. Now, let's assume that Kizza Besigye committed an offense and was running to Kenya. Of course, we have had stories that he was in many other countries before they captured him in Kenya. Let's assume that is correct. How come they did not arrest him when he was at his home at Kasangati and produce that evidence? How come they first go and run a dramatic movie in Nairobi before they arrest him and they bring him to the court martial? Just to, as I finish, the court martial is also another issue. That matter has been decided upon by the Court of Appeal, that the court martial is not supposed to try civilians. In other words, when you look at it in our constitution, it's not established as a court. It is only established as a court in the UPDF Act of 2005 under section 204, where it is supposed to try military officers of the UPDF who have committed an offense. Of course, subsection of that section argues that and those people found to be operating or having assortments that are attached to the military. But I have had a problem with that thing of something attached to the military. And I've been asking this question, that if I sleep in a garage, do I become a car?
On that note, let's move to, you certainly don't become a car. So let's move to Honorable Rose. Your thoughts still in relation to this admission of South Sudan to the region, and what generally this means to the region collectively. What can we do better? Well, now we are already in the situation. We cannot kick them out or throw them out. But certainly, how do we do better? How do we learn from this experience?
First of all, what is in Sudan, I don't call those as human beings. Those are beasts. They don't have regard to humanity and human life. They don't care. You can't believe for South Sudan to remove somebody from West Nile and eliminate life. I think they are the jokers of this world now. In my own constituency, Sudanese are over 300,000 people, over. And if you take the locals, they're either half or Sudanese are more. In Obongi, Sudanese are more. In Moyo, Sudanese are more. In Ajumani, mention them. But these are, if you go to Arua City now, those big mushrooming houses, really long, belong to Sudanese. But they can afford to kill us like rats. What they know as a city is Arua City. They have nothing. You know, They are very annoying people. Actually, it was a mistake. The only mistake East Africa made was to incorporate South Sudan. These are people who have no regard for anybody. You go there, just Waraga. My head was hit because of Waraga with the iron stick.
Seriously?
Yeah. I actually thought I had a crack of my scalp.
Wow.
Scalp. So, just as you said, from that day, I've never gone back to Sudan.
Oh dear.
Whatever, when people are going for games, they say, hey, let's go. No, the other day, members of parliament went for games. I can tell you, they are spitting fire. They were tortured, they were mistreated. You walk where you're walking. So it's a stateless nation. And to hand over our East Africa to them, I told you, East Africa, East African community, has outlived its usefulness. To put Sudan, Congo, Somalia, really, these are very serious people. So what are we looking for?
Another thing, Honorable, Dr. Ojambo here was talking about, you know, the trying of civilians in military courts. And this is something that has been going on despite rulings by, say, the Court of Appeal and other higher courts. We see this practice continuing unabated. And we've seen the NUP supporters who were released recently after being coerced, of course, to enter into a plea of guilt. And we're hearing what they're saying after they got out, like, oh, you know, we were actually forced. We didn't actually commit these offenses that we've been tried 4 years after, you know. But certainly one can assume or conclude that the state is using this, of course, to create fear among the masses, just to stifle and just suffocate that room for political contestation and dissent. But broadly speaking, when you look at the long-term consequences for this country, do you think we are actually aspiring to be better, or the leadership of this country? You subscribe to the ruling party.
Yes, I am.
When you sit, does it worry you as a party the direction in which you're actually leading this country?
Yeah, you see, I say this without mincing my words. I mean the NRM party, but I want to tell you, we can do better. This does not mean that there are no wrong things being done in the party. That's why we have to bring it out to light and say, Your Excellency, there is a problem here. Let me tell you, what surrounds my president mostly are greedy people. They are taking things, taxpayers' money without shame. Have you heard money even getting lost in Bank of Uganda?
In 60 seconds, yes.
At times I wake up and say, oh my God, go to the Kilembe mines. You will come back and weep and stop talking about corruption. A lot of cobalt, a lot of gold, a lot of iron ore and copper. If whatever is in Kilembe, the way I saw with my 2 naked eyes, is put to right use, will be better than America. We don't even need to talk about coffee. Nothing. Go to Karamoja here. I was in Karamoja from Sunday up to Thursday last week. And then I took off and went to West Nile to rescue and see to that my brother's body, Muki's body, comes to West Nile. I can't tell you what the amount of wealth being carried with big lorries. You wonder whether these are Ugandans that do not even have humanity for the poor Karamojongs. They are still eating. You see, I hate throwing banana peels in Karamoja because somebody will pick and eat it.
What?
After you have bought, I remember going to a restaurant, I bought all the remaining banana bunches there. I gave to them. And then I had 2. Now, the waitress collected and then decided to go and put them in the trash. And then somebody came and picked it and said, no. So the guy was eating.
Oh, no. And that's a normal, healthy human being.
Yes.
It's because they have nothing.
A normal, helpless Ugandan in Karamoja.
Instead of having people being picked and taken to court martial, Uganda can be able to make use of its wealth and work for its citizens. It is a responsibility of government to provide security, to observe human rights. So where we are going is wrong.
So at what point then shall we have that moment of reckoning within the ranks of the ruling party to say, look, we can actually do better. We have heard the cries of Ugandans for a long time, and it is now time for us to correct course. And this is how we're going to actually do it. When are we going to hear
You see,
that?
what we're doing right now, I don't think we're wasting time. This is how checks and balances are
Partly, yes.
are put on a ruling government, like us, the NRM. This is where we pick. And when we come out and say this is wrong, then we are condemning what we are doing, and we must stop it. I want to tell you, I still know, and I continue to believe Museveni is still that Mr. Museveni. I know a good person, but I have told you the surrounding of that man.
But he can kick them out if he wanted.
Yeah, but he should. He should kick them out.
So if he's keeping them around, is it because it actually works for him? Is it that his hands are completely tied?
No,
that he
these are
can't
people
say no to
who thrive and thrill on telling nonsense and nothing useful.
And he's aware of that, isn't he?
So maybe until when we mention it, I say, please, Muse, here there's a challenge. I've told you, he has trashed Kizza Besigye 4 times. And now Kizza Besigye is ailing. He is old. Now, why do you go and waste time with an old man? Why? You think this country can be overthrown with only 2 pistols? Have you gone to Bombo Barracks? Have you been here to Buya? What we have, including stones which have grenades from West Nile, and then you still think Kizza Besigye can be arrested for? No, it's more than this.
Thank you.
Let's not waste our time. Kizza was arrested.
Thank you, Honorable. I'll come back to you, Joseph and Miriam. The producers are telling me it's time for us to take a break. So let's take a break for a few minutes, and then we'll return and pick up from the 2 of you. Thank you very much.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from the break. You're still tuned to the Citizens Chat Show here on Civic Space TV, streaming on YouTube. And we're still talking about the militarization and abductions in the East African community. And we're asking, what's the future of democracy? And before we went into the break, Honorable Rose had just given us her submission about the question I had posed about basically the military court continuing to try civilians on political cases despite earlier rulings from higher courts in the country that this is actually against the law. And basically this environment of fear, what does it mean for the people in terms of, having the political space and so on? And I was asking whether the ruling party is actually concerned about what its leadership means for this country and whether they're actually bothered about changing things around. And she gave us her opinion. I would like to hear from you now, Joseph, what you think.
Judith, we were discussing the newness of South Sudan as a nation state. And I was looking through some of the decent people I know who are South Sudanese. I was privileged to have met the late John Garang. Extremely deep, generally by the extremely philosophical, quite visionary, and so did I meet other leaders of SPLM. And that was predominant around the time when they still are fighting for their independence. And again, I want to also say it on the record as you wait for my memoirs, that I actually contributed materially, in pushing these guys towards the end of the sessions. And it doesn't matter how much, but symbolic.
True.
Some of my then good friends, Miriam, from South Sudan, would go ahead and convince you, including one, Denga Jack, rest in peace. He convinced me very cheekily that, Joseph, when South Sudan becomes independent, we shall show Africa how it's done. The resource conversation Rose is saying. So I really hope people are taking some of these submissions seriously. When Rose talks about the wealth we have in Kasese, the wealth we have in Karamoja, and yet against the background of squalor that I was referring to across this country, including the fact that now, as we talk, people of Acholi and people of the Greater North cannot travel back to their homes because a crooked bridge has been broken. A bridge that was founded by UPC as early as 3 years of our independence. Structured. I also know South Sudanese who are close friends. One of whom is a powerful engineer who's made contributions in this country. In fact, they had most of their education was here, Rose. They had net contributions in this country. They had net contributions in Southern Africa, including, I think, Tanzania, including in Zambia. And they're major consultants around the world, and they're decent people. What then is the problem of this continent? I think, as Obama said, it is a question of leadership. Now, it worries me that the current surviving head of East Africa that is greatly revered, except, of course, I don't have much reverence for him. Mr. Museveni, I'm very open about it because of my level of disappointment with him. This guy was a young guy in the 60s. Judith, we got independence in 1962. So we're a completely new nation, you could argue, if you contextualize what Dr. Ojambo was talking about South Sudan as a newness, as nation states. Our leaders of the region, I think with the exception of Nyeri, who was slightly much more troubled in some of those European places, Milton Obote hadn't really been an answered Africa guy. Kenyatta was neither here nor there. But the three East African leaders built a foundation. But back to Uganda. What is it that, including her grandfather, the late Mzee Abanya, that these people were able to do, including some of our relatives in Ankole, some of the powerful guys like Mzee Peter Owola, who called about his secretary in a very particular, as they were growing at early parts of our independence, to build a new nation, so that in 62, by 63, they knew a guaranteed opportunity for girl children. By 64, they knew they needed to extend rail networks and build infrastructure. By 65, I told this program, you can talk about what is independence speech. 3 years into independence, how they had managed to enable the cooperative movements to more than quadruple. How they had managed to move the African capacity in our economy from 12% as per GDP to 35% within 3 years. And then you look, I could go on, investment in education. 1963, 1 year after independence, girl child educations across the country, meaning that that was necessary. And actually 1962 had said they wanted universal primary education, free and compulsory. By 1972, 10 years. I'm talking leadership and issues. These guys were doing these things in 1962, 63, 64. Pakwach Bridge was opened by Milton Obote in mid-66. So in other words, take the rail network from Soroti, take it to Lira, take it to Gulu, take it to Pakwach, with a plan to take it to Nebi, take it to Arua, take it to Nimule, and taking the other end in Congo. What is it that after 60 years today, is it really that South Sudan is a young nation? No, there is something fundamentally missing on this continent. And then what about the Republic of Uganda? That after 60 years, you're able to build these things within 4 years, and 40 years later, you're not able to barely sustain it. So I am suggesting, and I want to disappoint you, that the focus really therefore, as I said at the beginning, is possibly not the detail of whether or not it's about militarization and democracy. We urgently need to have a national reawakening. I'd like to see people from the Greater North and West Nile angry and annoyed that they've been cut off. I like to see that as a basis of a conversation to have with Dr. Ojambo from Ginger, to have with myself, to have with Miriam, that what about Lukaya Bridge and whatever happened, so that we're able to revisit our national conversation, so that we look at Project Uganda first. What is it and what has it gone wrong? I suggest, Rose, and I know it's a bit of a difficult thing for you, but you do a fantastic job, that unfortunately, Mr. Museveni, that you thought was good and you knew, fair enough, he may have been. I don't take it as so. We need to tell Mr. Museveni, sir, you have done your bit. I don't recognize many good things you've done, but you've done your bit. After 40 years, what is it that you, Mr. Museveni, even if we gave you another 100, you're going to be able to do? There is no evidence. Yeah. And Ugandans need to wake up to that. And those Ugandans include the people who is suggested are surrounding the man. So who are these people who are surrounding Mr. Museveni who don't recognize the political, economic, and social implications, including security implications, for holding our country stage? And for that, therefore, I slightly disagree with my fantastic friend Rose here, that I think if Mr. Museveni, the man of the 60s, the student of the 60s, and the one who boasted that he studied not only economics, also in Dar es Salaam, but economics and political science, should have the capacity to know that he's being surrounded by sharks. And if he does not know, and he does not have the capacity to know that he's being surrounded by sharks, then he takes absolute responsibility. Now, for those of us in UPC who say, we do not want to dump people in Lake Victoria, we do not want revenge. I was having a national conversation the other day that, look, I am pushing, and the event rose that the judicial system resolves, and I'm president formally of the Uganda People's Congress sitting in the Uganda House. My job will be to seek urgently a national conversation with political parties across the divide, including NRM, so that we begin to discuss, revisit the Ugandan question, but also with the urgent view on this thing about national truth and reconciliation, so that we have a transition post Mr. Museveni. Because unless we do that, whatever we are talking about is basically a song today, another topic tomorrow. Can you imagine Rose Obigah shouting the other day about the demand for road access via the park? And Rosie did a fantastic job. I was shocked that you and Gilbert Olanya, plus a few others, I was actually preparing to come, that Karuma Bridge could get broken in the sense. It is closed. And citizens of Greater North are compelled to pass by the park.
But also, as you talk about that, we were for the break, Robert just reminded us that Katonga Bridge is still not repaired fully. And we know the kind of load that this season actually, the loads that our roads carry during this season. It is peak season, and it's a very bad season. It's raining heavily. Yeah. So again, the conversation about Katonga Bridge has somehow fizzled out. So I think if you're talking about the bridges, like generally, I think let's also just have a look at what's happening across the country.
Indeed, I was actually bringing Katonga, and I was going to bring another, you'll be surprised. So, but there's an important point, that somebody nationally had the audacity to suggest that Ugandan citizens of northern extraction and Ugandan citizens in this country who opt and wish to either visit the north or go to the north or come to the south would have to pay via the park. Can you imagine how inhuman we have a system? It's either inhuman, it is sick, it is dead, or helpless, but definitely is not one which represents the people. Link that to the question you say about Katonga. This is a cross-country thing. In Bugiso, I told you that in Bali, it is a picture showing a trailer rolling into the sea. But my Nagongera today, Nagongera Bridge was broken last week. But I've told this television program, including Rose, I called a press conference in Terego. This is the other year, about the state of the road. Now the Nagongera Road is broken. So right now, Ofonopondo, Tango Doi, Fox Odoi, Max Ochai, Dixie Chepot, all the big names, including, by the way, Minister of Defense, who gets trolled in big trucks and many vehicles, Jacob Oboth. They cannot cross from Robangi barracks to go to their homes. What is going on in this country? And these guys have got the cheek when some local councillors in Terego decided to protest, and a contextual protest. protest about creating awareness, like Rose is saying here, that we're just putting pressure, we're just doing an awareness. It's a basic right. These guys are detained and these local politicians say no to them. So that's why I'm saying to you, Judith, in context, that we have a system which is basically dead. And the answer should be a reawakening for Ugandans, for us to come up together politically, across the political divide, look at Project Uganda and look at a post where we are. But just quickly, that conversation will then also have to bring in what I have suggested, which nobody hardly discusses, but except for the environmental like this, that we are facing climate change, we are facing environmental challenges of global proportions, and one that requires leadership. And at the moment, if we don't have leadership for the very basics, then we're actually facing a major national and indeed continental strategy.
Yeah, but just a cheap one. One second. Let me chip in. You see, the so-called people who surround the president, we're derailing him. That the animals fear human beings. They will see so many vehicles and run away. But they just asked a simple question. How about the animals in Lake Mburo National Park and Queen Elizabeth? That's why I still tell you Museveni wishes well for this country. But people around him don't want him to see.
What about him as a person?
Yeah, that's how it was opened and money was stopped. People were stopped from paying money because he came in. But if we are left to these officers who are supposed anyway to take decision, not everything should go to the president really. But when you leave it with them, what they know is their pocket.
I blame the local officials actually.
To an extent, let me just conclude in 30 seconds. To an extent, yes. And I also see, Rose, why you're going to take that position. No, it took your pressure. It took our pressure. It took our exposure of the hypocrisy. And finally, what Miriam had said, and Miriam, we need to amplify that point, that look, and I think you guys said it, people travel across national parks, without problems. So is this Mr. Museveni, who is completely gone anti-environmental literacy, to know that actually Mashishun Park National Park has got specialist animals that fear people and the others don't? No. There are nuances about that, meaning that some people argued, and I dare say that possibly the North doesn't matter. But also on the other hand, that if there are people who are surrounding Mr. Museveni and they hold that view, it doesn't matter. That's why I'm trying to say that we need to have a national conversation about Ugandans. Because, I dare say this, our founding independent parents, I will say this again and again, and on this panel, I am the expert. Our independent parents from Katuna to Kisoro to Tororo to Kotido. These are men and women who came around and had conversations about national projects. And this identity nonsense that came up by political opportunities did not apply. Project Uganda is possible, but also the Republic of Uganda, including from Karamoja, must have an entitlement and that anybody have. Can you imagine? Museveni still holds Babati Thieves, 21 of them in his cabinet. Why don't I hold him responsible?
Okay.
Thank you, Joseph. We're coming back to you, Miriam. Yes, just picking up from where, of course, Joseph has left off, and in response to the earlier question that I also posed to Honorable Rose, the issue of courts and the militarization, basically, of even the judiciary, where political dissent is no longer tolerated, where civil society actors and voices, individuals who are vocal, are actually stifled. And using this whole military courts and abductions and so on, where does that leave people like you, for example, who are vocal about human rights and also Joseph generally?
Yes.
So very, very concerned here.
Before I answer your question, I want to first conclude what Joseph had said. You saw Joseph and Honorable Obigah are blaming people surrounding Museveni for not doing
I did not.
Stuff. Okay. The Honorable did. But I want to blame the local people. People going to northern Ugandans, you can blame the politicians in Kampala or whatever. But if I'm from Bushenyi and there is a national park in Bushenyi, I expect the Bushenyi local officials to be the frontline people to control anything about that national park, anything including the passage in case the bridge is broken. So if the local leadership in northern Uganda was not doing anything about their people who were suffering, and maybe they were enjoying those gate checks that they were getting from passengers, I mean, we can blame Museveni or we can say people surrounding Museveni, but what about the local people? What about us? I think the problem, you know, we also have
at all levels. The problem is at all levels.
No, if you don't mind, Miriam. No, the park is controlled by Uganda Wildlife Authority.
I know, but still.
And the Uganda Wildlife Authority is not a northern thing. You know, I think where you're saying is what maybe people in northern Uganda should have come up in arms and simply say, you blocked up arms here,
Joseph,
we're not going to vote.
Joseph, we have a law about the local content, and we know if
does it apply? But anyway, Karen.
Okay, maybe it doesn't, but I want to think that if a national park is in my region, the leadership in that region have something to say about it. Back to the point which you raised about the court martial. So many people, including the court case in which the court decided, the constitutional court, the court martial is unconstitutional and should be revised, and I think the government appealed in the Supreme Court, and there are being delay tactics even to get that ruling come out. We all know, okay, we were talking about the militarization of the politics, and we all know the mainstream channels work. If you do the politics the right way, the legal way, if you have the real police, not military police, manning the elections, if you have people extradited the normal way, not abducted, if you have people arrested, not kidnapped at night by the military forces, some things would work. But I think Museveni emphasizes the military because the right way doesn't work for him. And he wants the banya, the dark way, because he can't stand the challenge that people present to him. Maybe he has lost the legitimacy and he's trying to enforce his leadership on people, and that's why he uses the military to push his way forward. And the court martial is that one extra unit in the whole system of the militarization of the politics. And where does that lead Uganda? Where does that leave Uganda? Honorable Obigah, again, I'm going to quote you on this. I'm going to paraphrase what you said. You said that the problem, Museveni is a good person and he's surrounded by the bad people, but I would like to disagree with you respectfully. I think Museveni is surrounded by the people he wants to surround himself with. And he's well aware, if he wants thugs, he's going to surround himself with thugs. If we want good people, he's going to surround himself with good people. And he has capacity to fire the thugs if he wanted to. So if he doesn't want, that's what he wants. They say, show me your friend and I know who you are. That's what he is. If he's surrounded by thugs, then maybe he's a thug. And we don't want to say it. I mean, I've said it. So, what is our role? Judith, you asked, what does that leave us as ordinary Ugandans? What is our fate? What is our destiny? What is our future? Honorable Ochieno has talked about having a national discussion, and we try to rebuild Uganda. We know we have resources. We know we have the capacity. We have enough educated people to run this country. We have the mechanisms. We have the institutions. We have the Rubicons, we have rubrics where we can copy how democracy works. We have seen African countries which work, like Botswana, like Ghana, like South Africa is very young democracy, but it's trying so hard and it can do much better. Even Kenya, with before Ruto messed it up, it was functioning. Maybe it's still even functioning in his presence because it has a strong foundation. For instance, you cannot override the judiciary in Kenya the way Museveni overrides the judiciary in Uganda. But then what is our role? How do we push back from that dictatorship as Ugandans? What are we doing about it? We can't wait for the politicians. Honorable Chen said the politicians, UPC, whatever need to discuss. I disagree with you. I think you politicians, you are the ones ditching us, and it's high time we ditch you. We need to be mainstream. We Ugandans, we need to think about Uganda minus the politicians. And if the politicians don't fit in our dreams, don't fit in our aspirations, then you are irrelevant and we no longer need you. And back to those old parties, I think old parties and NRM, they are part of the problem. Honorable Obigah said,
I know your opinion.
what can Besigye do to Museveni today? I think maybe Besigye is a threat because he's disagreeing with the party that the FDC is becoming, and that scares him. Ochieno hinted about how Museveni, I think it's for this recorded discussion, how Museveni wanted Honorable Siri Ogwara to cross with the UPC.
Yeah.
It's not about the person crossing over. We saw Mao crossing with the DP. And when whoever was supposed to cross with FDC refused, or maybe Besigye nipped on the project, then Besigye became a threat. And for that reason, maybe something had to be done. But it's so dirty, and it's a threat, all of us. Today you could be thinking, I'm so safe, I'm Ochieno, and I'm speaking in Civic Space TV, but maybe when you step outside, someone might come for you. Maybe you said something they don't like. Besigye was simply visiting a president,
like the fact that Mr. Museveni is presiding over 21 thieves who stole the poor and the poor from
Kyambogo. Is lucky they said he had a pistol. They might say you have an atomic bomb.
They tried the bunch that had guns in the carrier.
The Western So we better watch out. If Besigye can face such a threat and he's as big as he is, he's not one person you can kidnap and push under the bus and you know, forget about it. What about the small poor Ugandans? I mean, we are not poor because we are not poor, but given the circumstances, yes, maybe we are helpless. But I don't want us to be helpless. I don't want us to be to look on. Ugandans are so resilient, and the 65. Actually, the history of Uganda doesn't start with independence. But it starts way back to Uganda, even before it became Uganda as a country. We have resisted colonialism. We had heroes fighting back, the Kabaregas, the Mwangas. We saw the Uganda peasants fighting back and gaining independence under Musazi and other leaders. We fought for independence. We pushed Idamen out. We can still change Uganda for better. All we need is to organize. All we need is to have faith in us. Uganda is for us. Museveni will come and mess us up, and he will go away, maybe take his kids to exile. But what about you and me?
Thank you. So I want us to focus our attention a little back again to the militarization at the regional level. Basically, when you see what is happening across Ruto, you see the things in the abductions you mentioned in DRC, in South Sudan, and so on. Does that point to a crisis of leadership? I know we had already mentioned, apart from, say, the present holder of office at the EAC, the chair, because these abductions have also been happening. These problems have been there long before, say, Salva Kiir took over the leadership of the East African community. But who is there to, say, police the other leader, call the other to check, tell them to put their house in order? Like, there's that peer kind of support. Do you see it strong at the regional level, or do you think it's actually non-existent?
If I can.
Yeah, please.
Your guess is as good as mine. That layer has broken down, the leadership layer, the top leadership. We don't have mentors as far as democracy is concerned. The only country standing was Kenya, but now when Ruto came in, I think Ruto wasn't good enough for East Africa. And we have Tanzania, but they look to be so much into themselves that they don't have time for us. And that leaves us with nothing. We are like orphans as far as politics is concerned, and we are in the hands of people who don't care. But I don't think we are helpless as such. We have academia, Professor Ojambo is here. We have opinion leaders. We have honorable MPs. What are you doing about East African community? Like I said, it's the role of all of us. And I think it's now time. You see, revolutions are not started by leaders. They are started by people. And when people get enough with whatever leader is in power, they rise again. And they rise and push and put on the leaders they believe in until those leaders mess up again and again. I mean, we keep doing it. We rose up and changed the government several times in Uganda for better. Yeah, we've moved a step up. Now we are moving a few steps back, but we still have capacity to push back and push for the rule of the people, for democracy, for the rule of the law and the governance, where people have a say and the institutions work. That's what is very important, the institutions. For instance, I was expecting people in the judiciary to come up and say, extradition doesn't happen like this. I was expecting, okay, people in Kenya are rising up and condemning whatever happened to Kizza Besigye, the abduction of NRM government from Kenya. But where are the Ugandans? Where is, okay, the Law Society, the current president is trying to say something. Where is UPC? What have you said about it?
I have been
Where is the media? You know, everybody should be vocal when things are not going right, because we don't want to go back to where we are coming from. We could have hit a hitch here and there, but we shouldn't backslide really, really bad. And if we don't push back when bad things are happening, we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow, and we all become victims.
Thank you. I'll come back to you, Robert.
Yeah, you asked a question why things are getting militarized all over the East African region. I think the first problem technically is the fusing of states into government. You know, we have copied this Western democracy without understanding it properly. You need a stable state for democracy to go on, and you need a stable government to have a strong state. Now, in countries like Uganda, you don't know what is the state and what is government. You find a military officer is a minister at the same time. He is a partisan politician. For example, you have seen in our country here, it's a matter that the legal experts are still struggling with, whether a serving military officer should participate in partisan politics. And in Uganda, no story. In Rwanda, you see the same. In South Sudan, I said we don't talk about it. I have started seeing it happening also in Kenya. In Kenya, Kenya had really struggled to separate the state from government. That's why governments have been coming and going, but the state remains the same. That's why, for example, Ruto would stand with the sitting president and defeat his candidate in Kenya, because Ruto had almost fallen with the Jubilee Party. But he still struggled against the Jubilee Party, which was supporting ODM, Raila, and he defeated them, because the state was stronger than the government. Now Ruto is turning things. He now wants the government to be stronger than the state. Of course, in Uganda, there is no difference between the state and the government. That's why I normally ask these NRM people, when they use our cars, do they pay us? You find NRM official driving a UG vehicle. Then you ask you, man, your NRM is a party. Do you pay money to the state of Uganda? No, they don't. They ask you, what's the difference? They think the state is the same as government, because states are supposed to be permanent. Governments can change. You can bring UPC, you can bring FDC, you can bring NRM. The state needs to remain permanent. So once you don't separate, and one element of the state is the army. Now in our countries here, you don't differentiate. In fact, if you're an army officer and you don't flag for the sitting government, you may be taken to match India of any country. So that is one problem. The second problem is commercialization of politics. Somebody was asking whether the things which are happening, I'm telling you, in Kenya now, politics is transactional. People are buying political parties, and people are being bought into government, including serving army officers. You know, army men are trained to be servicemen, but they remain human beings. When they start seeing people, that's why you see, for example, even in Kenya now, many people resigned their military positions to stand in Kenya. Like there is now a governor of Wasiligishu called Natembea. He was a commissioner of police. He resigned. So if you make that it is only lucrative to be a political figure in a country, the others do not matter. Like this science, arts, teaching thing. I am looking at a situation where arts teachers are going to go to school and they just sit and converse. So that's how it happens. Why do you teach with a person who is getting 4 million and for you are getting 700? In fact, teachers, please think about that thing. Why do you continue teaching in the same school with a teacher who is getting 4 million shillings and for you are getting 700? Go and play matatu and go back home. So that people get to see what happens.
Thank you, Dr. Robert.
Professor, you have not had the most recent, real utter nonsense that nursery teachers must have degrees.
For what?
For what? So MPs must have PhDs.
Yes.
MPs might not only have PhDs, but some of those people for sure, I hope their mothers had degrees.
It's just madness. How can you expect a nursery teacher, a primary teacher, maybe we
By the
can...
way, nursery people are not called, they are not supposed to be teachers.
They're
They are facilitators and instructors. Just to play with the kids.
Kids, and then must have a degree in what?
In reality.
And then you find members of parliament, not even senior six, an equivalent. Equivalent to. At times, when you disagree with the principal, they start saying, no, yours is not equivalent.
It's not equivalent.
Then they just remove you, like this guy from... They removed a colleague of ours. And they just removed him. And they
His
said...
equivalent became unequal.
An equivalent. And then they said, you are no longer a member of parliament. The one he had trashed was sworn in. There was nothing like you go back to battle. No. You just now walk to parliament and he's seated there. Shameless man, seated. So, you know, when you talk about nursery instructors getting degrees, I thought something totally has now gone wrong.
Yeah. Who is the Minister of Education?
As if that's not enough. Look at the pay of teachers, that all of them should have upgraded primary teachers, nursery teachers in 10 years. And what is paid to them is peanut. For me, I don't buy in this thing of arts and science based. I asked the engineer of Ministry of Works. I had a talk show with him. I said, you see, every contract, every construction in this country is contracted out. And we are paying these so-called scientists hell of money. They cannot even do the smallest thing of manufacturing a pin.
Yeah, no.
Nothing. What they do is to come and swell in suits, coats.
Or supervising a supervising a drainage.
They can't even manage. You just look at Karuma Bridge. Yeah. Would we have gone to that level?
No.
Where were the engineers?
You need
so this thing of arts and science, I don't understand. Maybe they are saying the numbers of teachers. But I mean, before you go into increasing salary of one section, be mindful. I can tell you, in the villages, education has gone to the dogs. You find, you find the science teachers now saying we are the cream, and they take a lot of loans. They have also become slaves of their own. And then the arts teachers are heartbroken. They do not even know that these ones are busy servicing loans. The loans, if taken by a lady, is taken by the husband away. To go and marry another woman. And then for the men, they now get multiple relationships. So, my brother, me and people as a lawyer, and my 4 degrees are in arts. So, I have never fallen short of what to do and what to think. But the so-called scientists around me, I can tell you, they are a mess, a total mess. You tell me what value addition. Houses are collapsing in Kampala every day and killing people. Exactly, Chitezi here, where those arts scientists, Kabisa. We have a lot of resources in that Kasasiro. People came and talked to these scientists. Can we establish a factory to get industrial chemicals? And then, you know, nothing. From Monday to Monday, the whole of Monday, we went to so many plastic companies here in this country. The people working there are not scientists.
Yeah, they are not.
100% arts.
You don't have to be a scientist.
So the scientists of ours here, a lot needs to be desired. Today I was in Makerere University. I pitied the science section. Let them wake up and show us value for money. They are busy working for the Chinese in the Kilembe mines. They can't say, yes, we have come up. We want to form a company. We want now to be the lead engineers for the Kilembe mines. They are busy running after Indians, this way Chinese. Where are the Ugandans? I told them, I pity you. I wish I had the means. I would beat all of you one by one and you would wake up. You can't come together.
Violence.
So, no, but I mean, if you can't wake up. If you can't wake up, what should we do? Anyway.
She's speaking.
That day when this Uwaga guy was speaking from a comfort zone, that the animals also need their comfort. What I told him, if you are here at the stadium, studio, me and you would create an arena, would go physical. Then after that, we will come and start talking. You cannot take human beings to be less than animals.
Thank you.
Take your animals and leave our land.
Yes.
That is
Thank you, Honorable. We just have 8 minutes to go, so I'll move on to you, Joseph. So the question was still about, of course, the militarization at the region, but also how then can citizens also reclaim their space? I know, like she was saying, in Kenya, people actually, vocal. You see, there is that togetherness, different actors and different groups actually speaking with one voice and saying, look, this is a matter that presses us all as citizens and we need to rise up and reclaim our space. But what then happens across the board in the region? Because even in South Sudan, the citizens themselves are going through a lot of pressure and a lot of difficulties. You go to DRC, very resource rich, but still a lot of problems there that you wonder when these problems will actually see an end, when these problems will come to an end. So generally, when you might look at the political abductions, but also internally, there's so many pressures that citizens are under, whether it's political and so on, and how do you then fight back or push back?
As I said before, it's a question of leadership. This continent lacks leadership. I have argued in my other spaces, including spaces outside Uganda and within this region, that is a continent. And in fact, I was doing some work yesterday, Thursday morning, some academic research work, and I was pushing this very important thing that as a continent, who are the people who are banging our tables? I looked at the major leaders, in this case in the arts, and I was counting Okot Biteke, I was counting Ngugi wa Thiong'o, I was counting Wole Soyinka, and I was advancing a case for a young Kenyan filmmaker to make sure that if people like her could push our arts, then maybe these people were busy challenging in the politicians at early independence, and yet these guys were generally political leaders. Maybe we needed to have leadership emerge from some of those spaces. Point though is that, look, we have never really had a democracy in Uganda since 1985 July. We had democracy as a work in progress in Kenya because immediately after independence, once Kenyatta banned political parties, the latter part of Kenyatta was one-party state, ended up together with Moi and others. And then really from the beginning of the Kibakis, the pushback by the Railas and others. So Kenya moved towards that. And I think, as Miriam said, there's a little bit of a setback there. Tanzania is a fine, quiet, little nation state, but a one-party state that has opened up in terms of political parties. But on the basis of the relative advantage they've got as an independent, as a strong one-party state, is neither here nor there. If you look then at the rest of East Africa, this one is a military state in Uganda, but a military state that exported its military advance and systems into Rwanda. We exported it to Burundi, we exported it to Congo, exported to Sudan, and actually took it on behalf of the Anglo-Americans in Somalia. So unfortunately, the issue is not whether or not we can go democratic. The issue is in part what Miriam is saying, that Ugandans and East Africans need to wake up. But less Ugandans basically need to wake up as ordinary individuals. That's what I was saying much earlier, that we need to begin to have a conversation amongst the 5 of us as Ugandans, organized both at our so-called elite club across the political divide, and close our own leadership positions, including activists and academicians and media guys like yourselves, and go ahead and reach out to the people of Gulu and wake them up to make them know that they are actually a forgotten lot, to make the people of Zombo know that they are a forgotten lot, to make the people of Terego that they are actually not as much revered as they must think. So they even need to review their yellow positions, although they should not forget, I don't want to contradict that on Rose. But also then go back to the people of Tororo and demand, the people of Mbale and demand. Point is, Ugandans need to wake up. They're being driven like zombies to a slaughterhouse by a bunch of people whose interest is nothing about governance but self-interest and self-preservation. 40 years of NRA is a rather too long a time. And unless we're able to resolve that, whatever is happening to our people in Sudan, our people in Kenya, and possibly our people in Congo will not have an answer. But just quickly, ironically, amidst all this stateless madness, I think the dissent guy trying at the moment is occupied Congo, which has been occupied since Lumumba, but with the regime with rather weak, but the stories of some of these excesses are neither here nor there. But we understand issues to do with corruption and the fact that they at the moment are incapable of controlling the vast part of their country. So what are we saying as a sub-region? We are a sub-region in a far worse state than we were in 1962, and that's how scary it is.
Thank you. We just have about 2 minutes to go, and you had already talked about this issue earlier, Miriam. So now you'll actually start by concluding, and then we just work this side, and then we just wrap it up.
Okay.
Yeah, just your parting shots about today's conversation.
I think the parting shots, I can't overemphasize what other panelists have already said, the need for reform. Not only reforming our politics, but I think we really need to go beyond what we understand as politics. Look at nationalism. I introduced myself as a Pan-Africanist, and we believe in people power, not people power as NUP party, but the people themselves, people's organizing to really form the society they want. It could be the women, the civic society, as in the academia, the leadership, the religious leaders, the elders, the private workers, private companies, and the people. It is so sad, like Honorable Obigah said, we have so many resources, we have so many elites, we have so many educated citizens compared in 1962 when Uganda was independent. We have exposed people, we have traveled, we have access to information. We can compare scenarios and really borrow the good practices, but we have so failed at governance. Either we are too relaxed that we don't want to try hard, or things we don't want, to do the dirty work of cleaning up. But then if we don't clean up, we're gonna stay with the mess. And I want to appeal to people who think they're already eating the NRM people, or people in government, as the doctor has explained. There is the government and the state. The people who are in power and in control of our resources, who are messing up. We recently saw how money was stolen from Bank of Uganda. We all suspect the usual culprits.
Yeah, the suspects.
Yeah, the usual ones. And we all, unfortunately know that nothing is going to be done about it. And the following day, it's going to be the same headline. If it's not Bank of Uganda, it's another institution which is losing resources. And all these resources we lose, it's not like they run away in water or something. It's like someone somewhere messing up and squandering the resources that would have benefited the people. The Honorable, raised an unfortunate situation where people in Karamoja are starving. Those people in Karamoja are not strangers. They are our fellow Ugandans. And if we can't feed our own, who are we? What are we? Are we still a nation?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Joseph?
Ugandans just need to wake up and also accept that we've had 40 years of one regime, which is a monolithic regime, which has not taken them anywhere. I think Ugandans need to wake up and say no to NRM. Uganda, starting with Karamoja, Acholi, West Nile, Maibukedi, including those people on Nagongora Road, across the country, including Bugisu, and Ugandans, including those on the cattle corridor that UPC made rich in Angola, and they still think it's for them. But like Miriam is saying, that the future of this country is more than that. We need to wake up and simply say, we need to change because we need a new direction for this country, but we need a new direction in this country where all of us are actually together in harmony.
Thank you very much.
Actually, a thief has no party. A thief is a thief. You'll realize that those who are busy stealing this country are not necessarily NRM. But my party must remain in charge. This is where I blame us, the NRM. We are not doing enough. We cannot continue seeing West Nile #2 in poverty and hunger, Karamoja eating banana peels. Really? And yet we are collecting a lot of resources from Karamoja, a lot of minerals. We can do better. A lot of new mushrooming buildings, but these ones who think they are very rich and powerful are a handful. One day the poor will wake up, you'll be swept off. Wake up and do better.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Last but not least, Dr. Robert Ojambo,
Yeah,
your
I think
final
in
comments.
this discussion, the most important thing is that we need to value life. Every time we need to value life, whatever life it is. I've just seen reports that 30 people are dead in floods in Ojambo. 30 people, and those are the ones that have been already discovered by Red Cross. And you will not see any statement from government or from the minister or anything. This creates a very bad situation that people are just looking after themselves and everything. So if we value life, you cannot pick an entrepreneur from South Sudan dead. If we valued life, we would not be picking some people like Chicken from Nairobi because we want to defend our power, and so on and so forth. So every Ugandan you are dealing with, just know that you are dealing with a human being and who needs to be treated well.
Thank you very much to all of you, the four of you. We've been talking about the militarization and abductions in the East African community, and we're asking what's the future of democracy. Thank you very much, Dr. Robert Ojambo. Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph Ochieno. Thanks a lot, Miriam Kyomugasho. And last but not least, thank you, Honorable Rose Obigah, for making time. Hopefully we'll see you again, right?
I'll be here.
Very good. That brings us to the end of this edition of the Citizens Chat Show. We'll be back next week, same time. You'll be watching us on Friday, of course, from 2 p.m. We're streaming on YouTube at Civic Space TV. My name is Judith Atim. Bye.